Welcome to the Strangers on the Way podcast. I'm so excited to introduce you to today's guest, Bob Placko. I met Bob, oh my goodness, over a decade ago while I was in college. I would love to share the story because it's kind of funny, and then I'll have you introduce yourself, Bob. But I went to meet Bob in our career services office as a college student. I was a senior, just about to graduate. I majored in communications and I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And so I thought, it might be time to start thinking about that. And I scheduled an appointment with Bob, and he really helped me kind of dream a bit. But I ended up crying because I was like, I don't know what I want to do. And Bob has literally been just a strength for me throughout not just my right after college job decision, but also every transition that I've made in my career. I've leaned on his insight, his wisdom, his questions, and his support. And so he's not just done this for me, but for many. And so I'm just so excited to introduce you to him today. Bob does have a long career in human resources, and currently serves with a church ministry that offers job support to people all across our Northern Illinois. And so I'll let him share a little bit more about that. But Bob, welcome to the podcast. Could you just share a bit about who you are, where you come from, and what you love about this just process in people's lives?
Okay. Lauren, thanks for inviting me to join you today. And I think this is an important subject that you've asked me to just add some thoughts to for people in today's job market.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll talk a little bit more about how this aspect of your life is important and how can it affect others. And also talk a little bit more about what does it take to be competitive in today's job market. So my name is Bob Placko, Placko, and as an invite to anyone who is listening at a later point to the podcast, I'm available to you if all you have to do is reach out to Lauren, and she'll be happy to put you in touch with me if I can answer any questions for you. So a little bit quickly about my background. I graduated from Carthage College, as Lauren did, admittedly several decades earlier than Lauren.
Just a couple.
Just a couple, but we're not counting. But in my junior year of college, I decided I wanted to set my career in human resources. Back then, it was called personnel management. And
Wow.
today it's called human resources. So I graduated from college, got my first job working for an insurance company as an employment interviewer, spent a couple of years there and learned a lot and built a foundation for me then to take my next career step. I decided I wanted to move out of a service industry, namely insurance, into manufacturing. But more importantly, from a career planning standpoint, I wanted to work for someone who would pay for my master's degree. So I was very fortunate, and if you want to say divine intervention or God was looking down on me, and I ended up getting an offer from a company called Motorola. And I spent my entire career with Motorola. I spent 30 years, 30.
Wow.
And during the time in my early years, I was working full time and then went to grad school part time and got my master's degree in industrial relations. Thank you very much, Motorola. And so I spent 30 years with Motorola, a great company back then, a very different company today, as most of you would know. But I learned a lot. I was put into a number of different positions. But I always said in the back of my mind that when I hit 30 years with Motorola, I wanted to go do something different.
Hmm.
So when I hit 30 years with Motorola, I retired. I retired as a senior vice president of human resources.
Wow.
And from there, that's where my path to meet Lauren started. As I mentioned before, I worked for I graduated from Carthage, and I had maintained a relationship with Carthage for many years, being on committees, lecturing in the classroom, doing special projects for them, things like that. So when I made the decision to retire, I went to the career services director, and who I knew very well and had done several assignments for her in terms of speaking to classes and things like that. And I said, I would love to help you. So for 7 years after that, I worked for Carthage. I started out doing it on a volunteer basis. And then but the workload became such that it was appropriate for me to be paid. But I did two things. I ended up teaching a class called Life After Carthage, which was designed to help students transition to being a working professional. And then I also did career coaching one-on-one with students at Carthage, and that's how I met Lauren. And so I did that for 7 years, and then I decided that it was time to stop that because both my parents were getting up in years and needed some help and some assistance, which I was able to provide. And then as they both passed on, I then renewed my commitment to helping people in their career management issues to join two church-based job ministries. One is the St. Hubert's Job Support Ministry in Hoffman Estates, and the other is the Holy Family Job Support Ministry in Inverness, Illinois. And I am, to this day, still active in both. And that's now coming up on 7 or 8 years. So that's what I do. Some of you might be saying, well, why did you leave HR and why do you do what you do? And I believe it kind of goes to some of my values, which is I enjoy helping people achieve their career goals. Number one. Number two, it's a logical extension of what I did before. It's fundamentally HR work, where you're coaching and enabling people to contribute more to their employer, things like that. So the career coaching that I do ranges from people who are vice presidents to people who are new graduates. And in every type of industry, in every type of age, things like that. So that's a little bit about who I am. I live in Rolling Meadows, Illinois, married to my wife, Diane, for 48 years. It was important that I knew that date, by the way.
You're a smart man.
And so that's just a little bit about me. I like to have fun, and that's why I'm very happy to participate in Lauren's podcasts.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, it's really an honor to have you here. Your expertise is like unmatched, and just personally, thank you for how you've walked me through every transition. I feel like the job transitions and transitions in life can be so vulnerable, and so having someone to help guide and coach you along the way is such a gift. For people who are looking to make a transition, but maybe don't know what it is, what are some like first steps that you would give them as they're kind of like, I'm not as content here. I might want to make a shift. Like, I'm not sure what that looks like. What do you kind of advise people that you work with?
My first encouragement is to always be honest with yourself. Number one. Number two, follow your heart. Number three, be realistic.
Hmm.
And most importantly, don't just think about it. Put an action plan in place to test your thinking.
Hmm.
Test your thinking. And maybe, Lauren, I'll just inject a concept that I use
Mm-hmm.
with job seekers. If you think of yourself holistically, and you're looking at the entire person, think of yourself as having different sections of your life that you need to take care of. Number one, obviously, your personal life. Okay. Number two, specifically, your family life. Number three, you've got financial commitments that you need to be responsible for. Let me just check my notes here. Another important one is your faith,
Hmm.
because there are lots of things that God will guide you on and will give you thoughts on, things like that. And that's another section of your life you need to pay attention to. The big chunk that we're going to talk about today is your professional side. And if you think about your professional side, it can have a huge impact on these other segments that we just talked about. And to your question, Lauren, if you think about people who are unhappy with their professional life, or confused or questioning your professional life, if you don't do anything about it, the other segments will suffer as a
Hmm.
result of it. And then the last piece, which is something that I know Lauren will have a smile on her face when I bring it up,
I already know what you're gonna say. Go ahead.
is work-life balance. Okay, and for those of you who know Lauren, every time Lauren and I talk, one of the first questions I ask is, how are you doing on work-life balance? And work-life balance is kind of the relationship of all these responsibilities that you have, or pieces of your life that have to be compatible, that have to be paid attention to, and that have to be cared on by you. So the reason, for my comment about following your heart, being true to yourself, being honest, but most importantly, doing something about it. I think too many job seekers sit there and complain about, I wish I had a better job, or I hate my company, or things like that, or I want to continue to be challenged, things like that. Those are all very valid feelings to have, but then you need to explore those.
Hmm.
And you need to be able to say, what is it that I need to do to kind of balance out those 6 segments of my life? Okay. So that's a
Mhm.
little bit of a long story to your question, Lauren, but
No, it's good.
simply put, and to people who will be watching the podcast, don't talk about wanting to do something, do something
Mhm.
about wanting to do something. So
Yeah,
that's the first comment that I'd make there. Okay.
yeah, that's so good. So, let's get really practical. When you say do something, what could that look like?
Okay. I think uh, a lot of job seekers that I talk to think that a effective search is getting a resume, slapping it on the internet, and waiting for jobs to fall down on your head. And I don't think that's a good strategy. I don't think that's a good strategy because you're going to get job consideration for positions that you don't want. And all you're going to do then is say, well, that's the only jobs I got offered, but I don't like those. And you're going to be miserable again. So my encouragement is to be aggressive, to think out of the box about what you want to do. And I'm going to spend just a minute on that last comment. Careers like mine, 30 years, one company, all in human resources, one function, those days are very different today.
Yeah.
And job seekers should take confidence in the fact that it's okay to change careers, to change functions, to do something that you never thought people would think you could do, and to have the courage to go out and try it. So, kind of a bit of advice that I would give people who are going to be listening to our conversation is avoid the automatic no. And what I mean by that is too many times people say, well, no, it's not exactly what I want. Never turn down a chance to interview for a job, because until you know enough about it, you're not in a position to say no. So as opposed to my words, yeah, but I don't want to do that, I would ask you never to use those words, but in its place, use why not? Give it a try. And give it a try. Because careers, and I'll gesture on the screen here, careers aren't like this anymore. Careers zigzag back and forth. And so, many of you who listen to this are going to work for 4 or 5 different companies in 4 or 5 different jobs. And your goal should be to build your experience base and to build your skill set and to think of the next job leads to the next job. Okay. And maybe, Lauren, at this point, I'll give just a comment about what today's job market is like.
Yeah, that'd be great.
It is outstanding. It is outstanding. And simply put, there's a labor shortage. There are more jobs than there are people to fill them. Now, a very important explanation is the fact that in order to be successful in today's job market, you have to be competitive. You have to show that you're the best person for the job and the most qualified, as opposed to sitting back and waiting for jobs to land on your head. But the job market is wide open for those people who go after it professionally, honestly, and with a sense of purpose. So to the people that'll listen to this podcast, the job market is yours. And that's a much better scenario to be in than some of the old economies that we've gone through, where there were too many job seekers and not enough jobs. It's
right.
Just the opposite. Just the opposite.
That's great. That's so good to hear. So good. So Bob is kind of famous for something called his top 10 lists. I've heard these throughout the years, and they're really solid tips and yeah, just wisdom for a variety of things. But I know you have some really excellent tips for job seekers and those who are looking to interview. Could you run through one of your top 10 lists with us?
Okay. All right. So this is my top 10 things that you commit to make your job search successful. Okay. And I'm going to go through and I'll give you just a couple of examples for each.
Great.
Number 10, I commit to start early and not to wait until it's too late. What I mean by that, if your heart tells you it might be time for a job change, begin to start the process. Don't wait until your disappointment in wherever you're currently working gets you into a performance problem and you end up getting terminated for performance. Right? So my encouragement to you, be bold, get out of your comfort zone, take those first steps, like getting a resume together, really thinking through what your career interests are, building your networking circle. Who can you talk to? And we'll spend a little more time about that, because networking is a very prime component to being successful in today's job market. So the first point of the commitment is get started. Don't wait till it's too late. Don't sit there and do nothing and mope about it. Number 9, very key here, commit to owning the majority of the responsibility for your job search. This is on you, nobody else. It's up to you to own it and to take action and to be responsible for it. Number 8, I commit to successfully manage any fear or apprehension regarding marketing myself to employers. Let's be very blunt about it. A job search is a pretty daunting process. And a lot of times fear and apprehension or second guessing yourself come into play. And my encouragement to you is figure out how to manage that. And not to be glass half empty, but to be glass half full. And I'll give you some other ideas there. Next, number 7, I commit to leverage all resources available to me during my job search. A job search is a very lonely process, and you don't have to go through it alone. A couple of the examples I gave you of job support groups that I'm part of through churches. See if there's a church in your area that has a job support ministry. Libraries are extraordinary resources for you to use. Third, those of you who graduated from a college, if you're an alumni of the college, you have access to the career services department there. So reach out and don't go through your search alone. Now, in that regard, I would tell you to also build your own personal set of your own personal board of directors, if you will. People that you trust that will tell you the truth and not just what you want to hear. All right. So do that. Number 6, I commit to marketing my skills by anticipating and providing competitive interview response. This is a big deal for people that I coach. Too many times, people think I'm telling them to brag. And I'm not telling them to brag, I'm telling them to compete. But most importantly, know what you should use as a competitive strength. What are things you should be proud of? What are the 3 things you're best at? What sets you apart from everybody else? So those are things that I would encourage you to kind of use as kind of an overall philosophy. What is it that makes me somebody to be the best candidate for your job? But then be prepared to give examples for it, by all means. So it's one thing to say I'm good at communication skills, but then be prepared with 2 or 3 examples based on your experience of why it shows you to be very good at communicating. Okay. Number 5, I commit to exploring all types of employers in order to do a thorough job search. There is nothing wrong with going from a large company to a small company to a nonprofit to a religious-based organization, from one industry to another industry, back and forth. But remember what I said at the start, as long as you are building your experience base. Because remember, the next job will get you the next job. Okay? Next, I commit to be prepared for every interview and to learn from each interview experience. Simply put, there is no such thing as a perfect interview. Therefore, when you have an interview, and that's the goal, is to get in front of somebody or get on a Zoom call or a phone screen, things like that, learn from every interview experience. Now, too many times people beat themselves up by saying, I should have said this, I should have said that. What I want you to start with is, what did you do well? What did you answer well? And then after that, say, what is it that I could have answered differently? And to be able to then say, the next time somebody asks me that, I'll be better prepared for it. Okay. And another good idea that I always coach people on is, think of 3 or 4 questions you hope they don't ask you. And then be prepared. How would you answer that question? Okay. And then just a fundamental principle that I want you to think about is, being a good interviewee doesn't mean you just sit there and answer questions. What I want you to do is to be engaged and to have a strategy to use on, what do I want to get across in the interview, even if I'm not asked about it. Okay. So an interview is not a one-way street. And again, for the record, you will meet the best and worst of interviewers, but your goal is to get past them. Okay? Number 3, I commit to professionally represent myself throughout my search process. You are who you are every step of the way. Always maintain your professionalism, your integrity, your attitude, your enthusiasm, and your principles. Don't get down in the mud, but always maintain yourself as being a consummate professional. That being said, be yourself at the start. Number 2, I commit to asking the tough questions of myself and maintaining my personal integrity. A job search is a journey. It's not a weekend trip. You're going to have wild success and you'll have disappointment along the way, but always maintain your personal integrity throughout that process. And then finally, I commit to proving to any prospective employer that I am the best candidate and I can be an outstanding asset to your company. So remember, that's not bragging. That means you're going to walk your talk, and that means you're going to consistently prove to people that they should be proud that they hired you. Okay, so that's my top 10 list. And some of those might be soft, but I think they're broad enough that you can take it inside you and say, those are the things I want to use as a kind of a benchmark for how I'm doing and to check myself.
So good.
Okay.
I'd love to circle back on a couple of them. You had talked about kind of the fears that could rise when we're in the job search process and maybe insecurities. And I know you and I have talked through lots of these. What are some ways people can navigate those things, like when fear starts to creep in or insecurity? What do you advise people that you coach?
Okay. Um, um, First, always prepare for every step of the process. And by preparing, I mean anticipate what people are going to ask you. What are the job duties? What are they looking for? Things like that. And then be prepared to present yourself confidently and with enthusiasm for those kinds of scenarios. A couple other things that are kind of my Plackoisms, if you will. All right. Number one, very important, believe in yourself. Number two, be proud of who you are. And if you use those to say, I'm good at that, and I'm going to be prepared, and I'm going to be able to properly represent myself to an employer, that helps you maybe not completely overcome, but at least it gives you a sense of momentum. And I believe that the more steps you take as part of that process, you will gain in confidence. And the term that I use when I coach people is, don't forget to celebrate the small wins. I sent my resume out. I had 2 phone screens. I made 3 networking contacts. I had a really good interview the other day. I'm moving on to the second level of interviewing, things like that. Take time to celebrate those small steps. And those small steps will lead to getting the job ultimately. Okay. But, I think it's all about overcoming this cloud, if you will, about that changing jobs or finding a new job is a very scary and negative process. It can be very exciting, provided you keep learning from each step of the way. Okay.
That's so good. Yeah, I know in one of your lists you had said anticipation plus preparation equals competitive advantage.
Right.
And I love even the idea of like going into it with a posture of like, oh, this could be really exciting instead of, oh my goodness, this is terrifying.
Right. And
You know?
again, it's all about uh, believing in yourself. I really, as simple as that sounds, I believe it is absolutely true. Because remember, I'm going to look, when I meet you for the first time, I'm going to look to see whether you know who you are, what you've done, and why I should invest time and energy in considering you as an applicant. And there are lots and lots of examples of people who simply don't care and they're not prepared. And I know I've shared this with you, Lauren, and others. In my career, I would form my first impression of you in the first 30 seconds. And if you blow it, it's going to be a short interview. But if you come out with confidence, enthusiasm, and preparedness, I'm going to take my time and I'm going to get to know you.
Mm-hmm.
But
Can,
don't shoot yourself in the foot by coming off unprepared or lacking confidence or not being interested.
mm-hmm. Could we talk a little bit more about that, the first impression? So 30 seconds. How do you prepare for that first impression?
Okay. Um, uh, there is a question that I always asked to anyone that I interviewed in the first um, 30 seconds. I would be on one side of the desk, you would be on the other side of the desk, your resume would be right in the center of my desk. And I would put my hand on the resume, move it to the left or to the right, and I would say, "Tell me about yourself." The dreaded "tell me about yourself" question. And then, because what I'm looking for is, what do you want me to know? What is it that you consider to be important and competitive? And how do you articulate that? It's an ability to self-reflect and for you to be able to kind of tell your story. The other
Mm-hmm.
thing I would encourage you to do, if it's a face-to-face interview and you're in person, um, we are now back since COVID is rapidly becoming less of an issue here. People are going to be meeting you face to face. Learn how to shake hands and how to prepare to say something as obvious as, "Hi, I'm Lauren Hansen. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm very excited about the time we're going to spend together talking about opportunities with Motorola. And I'm really looking forward to our interview time together."
Mm-hmm.
What that does is it gets the Twitter out of your voice. And it also gives you a chance to kind of get into a rhythm a little bit. But
Mm-hmm.
it's all about eye contact, being confident, being able to um, look people in the eye and to be able to maintain your contact. And the last thing, as simple as this sounds, smile.
Hmm.
Because when you smile, it shows confidence, interest, and enthusiasm.
So good.
So
Amazing.
that's a way to kind of get the jitters out, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's so helpful. So good. Um, well, because this podcast is about meeting strangers and just the power of those interactions, I know in your career, everyone I assume that you interviewed pretty much was a stranger. So as we end, I would love to ask, like, if you have just a fun interview story, someone that you met that just stands out to you. But before that, any kind of like final words of wisdom for any of our listeners along any, this job search process or discovering what, the next, phase is, anything as we kind of land
Okay.
the plane.
Um, for those of you that are thinking of changing a career or taking the next career step, um, get comfortable with telling people that you meet that you're considering to changing jobs,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's okay, and not just okay. I strongly recommend that you get comfortable asking people in your network for help. Um, I'm looking for jobs in this area, and it might be geographic, it might be a functional expertise, things like that. And I would say that having a resume in your on your person anytime you're meeting somebody, whether they're standing behind you in the line at the Jewel food store or at your church on a Sunday following Mass. And there's just kind of a general networking flow about it. But get comfortable telling people that you're considering a career change. You're looking for any ideas that they can share for you. And that um, you're comfortable in doing so. And believe me, you would be amazed at the number of people who would love to help you if they knew you were interested in changing jobs. So remember, if you don't tell me, I don't know. And so, so that's, I think, just kind of an overarching thing that helps you become more comfortable telling people you're looking for work, telling people you're looking for their help. And at the same time, then you would always end that by saying, is there anything I can help you with? Because it's a reciprocal process. Okay.
So
But,
good.
you know, believe in yourself if you want to test the market. And remember, sometimes people think that, well, if I start, I've got to accept the offer. And my point is, get to the point of knowing enough about the company. And if you do get an offer and it's the wrong fit, say no. And turn it on, turn it down, and move on to the next one. But, really understand who you are, what you bring to the party, what you're really good at, things like that. And then one other major idea that I'd ask you to think about, and a lot of people that might listen to this might not be familiar with this term. I always encourage job seekers to have leave behinds, Leave behind, a leave behind. And that could be a letter of recommendation. That could be a sample of your work product. It could be a list of what the job duties are compared to what your experience is and how they match up. And that's a great way to distinguish yourself from other people, because not many people do that.
Yeah.
And your goal there is for the interviewer then to look at that and say, well, that's interesting. We didn't talk about that. Tell me more about it. And so always look for those things that are good leave behinds that an interviewer then can say, boy, I'm glad you brought that up. Okay. So that's, kind of some overarching ideas. Okay?
Yeah, so good. I love that. All right, I'd love to hear. I'm sure you've interviewed so many different types of people, met so many different strangers. Is there one story that kind of comes to mind, or even just a lesson learned, or someone that did something really well, or I don't know, just a story that rises to the top of a stranger that you met during your career or your volunteer work?
Okay. One funny story, if you will. It goes back
We
to
love them.
our Carthage days. I was doing a videotape mock interview with, it was a young man. He was a senior. And we got to the point of asking the question. I said, okay, if I hired you, what's your biggest weakness? What would be the one thing that you would want me to help you with? And this young man, looked me right in the eye and said, boy, I just can't get going before 11 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. And I said, okay, stop the camera. I said, okay, I'll give you an A+ for honesty and a D- for interview strategy.
That's awesome.
Just remember, there's a point of being honest versus a point of shooting yourself in the foot. Okay. So that's my humor, if you will.
I love that.
The other thing is a wonderful success story that's about 3 months old, and it comes from one of the job ministries. It was a woman. She was from Europe. She had a very good career. Her company, unfortunately, went through a financial cutback. Single mom, 2 young kids. And she was caught in kind of a never-ending battle of companies saying, we haven't made a decision yet, haven't made a decision yet, haven't made a decision yet. So we interviewed, we did some mock interviewing because she told me that she was ready to have what she thought would be the final interview with the company, which was her number one choice.
Hmm.
And this would have been her fifth interview.
Wow.
Okay? And I would describe her as being a director level candidate. So we interviewed, and I said, now, where are you on the other companies that you've interviewed with? Well, I'm waiting to hear back from them. And we developed a strategy. And I said, all right, go back to those other 5 companies, tell them you're going to have a final interview tomorrow. And where are they in terms of their consideration for you? And I also encouraged her to say that each one of those companies was her top choice. So lo and behold, she has the final interview with the company, and they give her an offer right then and there.
Wow.
And it was an offer that exceeded what she was hoping for.
Wow.
There wasn't a need for her to negotiate. And the reason that was most important to her is it gave her the best work-life balance for her children. So anyway, so she gets the offer. They said they'd send the offer to her email later that day. She gets home. Sure enough, there's the offer. And there are 5 other written offers in her email from the other companies.
Wow. Wow.
And, at the risk of getting a little melodramatic, so I saw her at the job support meeting, and she came up and she had tears in her eyes.
Mm-hmm.
She said, I never thought I could do this. But clear, she did it.
Yeah.
Not me. She did it. And so, that's, I share that with your audience to say that there are very good stories out there.
Yeah.
But in this case, she earned it. She worked hard for it. She took some risks, and, God bless her, she did it.
Wow. Oh, so powerful. I love that. Bob, you're just making girls cry all over the world.
Well,
No.
but,
Oh,
but to everybody that's going to listen to this, it's a very good job market
yeah.
for those people who do it professionally and confidently and with a sense of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and as I mentioned, if I can help anybody, please contact Lauren. She can pass you my way. But I wish you and your audience all the best.
Yes. Thank you, Bob. This was such a joy. Yeah, my prayers just for our listeners to have, I feel like confidence even stirring. So yeah, just my prayers that confidence with some concrete steps are really clear. So thank you, Bob, for your expertise, for what you do, and thank you to our listeners.
All right. Thank you.